Hi, this lecture is about an essay called Analyze an Argument. So let's begin. So what's the objective? With this essay, the jury tries to evaluate whether you can analyze and evaluate an argument. You get a passage which contains an argument. The argument has claims backed by reasons and evidences to support that argument. Your task is to discuss the flaws and unproven assumptions in that argument. So unlike the analyze an issue task where you were supposed to basically agree or disagree with the issue, in the analyze an argument task, you're not supposed to do this. So, in fact, you're to find the flaws and the assumptions that are given in the argument. You should suggest how it can be improved. So, you should come up with suggestions as to how to strengthen the argument. You are not required to take a position. As I've said before, you can't state whether you agree or disagree with the conclusion. Scores are based on the analytical skills demonstrated in your evaluation. So, your primary scores come from your ability to identify the flaws and assumptions and your suggestions for improvements. So, this is what you're required to do on the analyze an argument essay. Let's talk about some tips for the task. So, most importantly, you should read the argument properly and instructions as well. It is also suggested that you should read the instructions more than once if needed. In fact, the argument as compared to the issue is very lengthy. The argument is about anywhere from 150 to 300 words long. So this is a pretty lengthy argument. So I also just suggest that you take notes. Pay attention to the evidence offered, assumptions, and any missing information. Since you need to identify the flaws, so try to look at the evidence that they have offered. This is where you'll find the flaws. Look at the assumptions, what the assumptions are, and try to find any missing information so that you can suggest some improvements in the argument. Create a structure of your analysis on scratch paper. Just like I suggested in the issue task, that you should use the scratch paper. So in this task, you should also draw a structure of your analysis before you start typing your essay. Your structure should include the flaws and the suggestions. For arguments, there's a pool of arguments available on ets.org. You should go through this pool of argument and try to understand what kind of arguments you could be facing in the test. So let's talk about an example argument. Alright. So in an attempt to improve highway safety, Trinity County last year lowered its speed limit from 55 to 45 miles per hour on all county highways. But this effort has failed. The number of accidents has not decreased, and based on reports by the Highway Patrol, many drivers are exceeding the speed limit. Trinity County should instead take the same kind of road improvement project that Butler County completed 5 years ago. So, this is what is suggested by the argument. So, what did the Butler County do 5 years ago? Increasing lane widths, resurfacing rough highways, and improving visibility at dangerous intersections. So these are the safety measures taken by Butler County. Today, major Butler County roads still have a 55 miles per hour speed limit, yet there were 25% fewer reported accidents in Butler County this past year than there were 5 years ago. So they're suggesting that since whatever the changes were made in the Prunty County, they were ineffective, so the Prunty County should follow what Butler County did, and this is what they did, right? 1, 2 and 3. And it's suggested that if Prunty County does what Butler County did, so they should see similar results. So this is what the argument proposes. What are the instructions? Here you go. Write a response in which you discuss what specific evidence is needed to evaluate the argument and explain how the evidence would weaken or strengthen the argument. So you're basically supposed to find specific evidence that is needed to evaluate the argument. So once again, you should talk about the flaws as well as additional information that would strengthen the argument. The flaws would explain how the argument is weakened, and the improvements would guide how the argument would be strengthened. So this is the first argument, example argument. Now let's talk about another example argument. In surveys, Mason City residents rank water sports, swimming, boating and fishing among their favorite recreational activities. The Mason River flowing through the city is rarely used for these pursuits, however, and the City Park Department devotes little of its budget to maintaining riverside recreation facilities. For years, there have been complaints from residents about the quality of river's water and the river's smell. In response, the state has recently announced plans to clean up Mason River. Use of the river for water sports is therefore sure to increase. So this is the final punchline by the argument. The city government should, for that reason, devote more money in this year's budget to riverside recreational facilities. Alright, so this argument proposes that the Mason City residents in a survey suggested that recreational activities like water sports recreational activities are their favorite, and a river flowing through the city is not clean and its use is rare, and there were some complaints about the condition of the river, and in response the state is basically going to clean the river, and now they have assumed that with a clean river its use is going to increase. So finally the state should devote more resources to riverside recreational facilities. Now what are the instructions? Write a response in which you examine the stated and or unstated assumptions. Stated and or unstated assumptions of the argument. Be sure to explain how the argument depends on the assumptions and what the implications are if the assumptions prove unwarranted. So these are the instructions for this argument. In the next lecture, I'll be describing in detail how to attempt or solve this argument. Stay tuned for future videos.